Mark's going to do some counting up here to see sort of, based on this group, where the different pieces are falling out. But just to get started, if anyone wants to share a little bit more about where you put the most of your sticky dots and why that priority was important to you, we would love to hear more from you about sort of why you chose what you chose. Yeah.
Well, I just seem to go to infrastructure, economic development, even though I'm not really interested in those things. It seems like those are the kind of drivers. Public trust, education, you got to go with it above everything else, but tentacles feeding out to all these other things. And start there, then all the other things can happen.
Yeah, we were speaking in this table a little bit about, it is kind of funny to break some of these pieces out because they all feed each other in so many very important ways and overlap with each other in certain ways. So you're absolutely right, where you might start with public trust and it might have these really big impacts in other areas as well. Anyone else?
I think that's also why you have quality of life. This is what you bought it on quality of life, but that's kind of like an end product of all these things put together. The quality of life is just going to come along, whether it's being drugged along or not. It's there.
Yeah.
So, and then economic development is top.
Yeah.
It kind of starts with community engagement, doesn't it? I mean, the plethora of people we had, I couldn't even find parking. You know, so obviously, you know, and then with that, you get effective government because people know what we want, or at least people can, you can't complain. We ran across that in the Middle East and stuff. You don't get to complain if you didn't show up. But we had to let people know where the meeting was, and we had to actually engage the people, have conversations, they called it. That's how the government called it. We had lots of conversations. And then, you know, I think the rest all just is kind of standard, you know, structure. It looks like most of the other things should fall into place pretty quick. That's personal opinion. Quality of life, we live in paradise. You know, so. You know. And housing, somebody put down housing, other ideas. That would be really, that will totally affect the amount of people we can draw here, the people, the working class people, stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a mixed bag. Cool. How do you see those numbers? What, and you as the professionals, what do you guys think? What would be your first step?
Well, our first step is always to ask you.
Community engagement.
That's right. That's right.
Well, has anyone seen anything that surprises them? The turnout. Good. Good, bad, or indifferent?
That's, well, it's actually about what I would expect it to be.
Okay.
But very short notice.
Okay.
I just found out yesterday and emailed him.
Right.
Thank you.
And then
Good
he
job.
got him.
Great job. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just found out yesterday
Okay.
through an email for a press release that was dated back on the 5th.
But even being back on the 5th, it's 7 days. Most people, yeah, this should have been something that was out there a month ago
Okay.
and well publicized. You'd probably have 100 people in here better.
Yeah, we'll be talking about this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, and we do hope that the public survey will also give more opportunities in the longer time frame to also provide that feedback. But thank you, that's really helpful for us.
So the online public, sorry. My mom's 80 years old. She's lived here since the early 70s. She doesn't do online.
We will have paper copies available, but that is a challenge that we do face, especially in a large geographic area for certain.
She does everything by mail. Everything. Her credit card bill, she has a dispute on it, she mails a letter. She doesn't even pick up the phone.
And there will be a mail-in option for that public survey as well, that we will receive.
So look at it as a public trust. I've only been in this county for 12 years or so. But there's a lot of things that have been being thrown out that are being changed within how the county is running. To see the turnout here today makes me, you know, with the short notice of a meeting of something that should be a very positive thing, it almost seems like it's a little shady. A little what? I didn't catch that. Shady. Shady. Just seems that way, and from a not highly engaged in this type of work. But I I would want to see 100 people in this room from every level, and to have them not here, I'd ask myself why. I guarantee you there's at least 100 people that would have been interested in this, but they probably didn't know about it.
Okay.
So, I mean, I feel the same way you do. I would really like to see more people here.
Right.
But the fact that they're not here means that, oh, we have to say more. You know, it kind of puts it on us that we really have to kind of come up with stuff, and they'll listen to us because we're the only ones here.
Right.
So that's, I guess that's the benefit of it. You know, and I don't really have any great ideas, but I think a bunch of people with no ideas can, you know, eventually lead to an idea.
I'll just throw something in because you mentioned about noticing people trying to get here and there. A big problem with a lot of events and committees and stuff I've been involved with is the community apathy. Once the sun goes down, everybody locks the doors type of deal. And there's a lot of ways you can get out. Basically mine was on social media when I first saw it, and that's the big thing. That's where things are going right now. The forums that was on probably reached over 20,000 people to do it. So you see that when they come up and they're always checking on and do this. But then I always have gotten a report, well, I didn't know that was going on. And it's kind of like, well, how did you get it? Did you get it? Well, we put it in the paper, we put it on the radio, it's been on TV, and it's in the posters. And it's in that, and it's, well, I don't have time to look at the posters because I'm going shopping. I don't like the radio, I hate TV, I hate the newspaper.
But was that the case for this event?
No, that's kind of the thing, trying to get these people out. So they're always making reasons why I can't see it. So your challenge to get to these people is tough. However, using the same type of thing, doing it, when there was the event, the recent event on the TLT stuff, they were passionate about that. Oh, they showed up and filled the room. So a lot of people aren't really passionate of a strategic plan for the government. It's like, hey, I elected you guys to do your job.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just the apathy of the whole thing. People just don't have the drive that they want you to do that. And then, so the crowd is smaller that has that passion and has the drive or has that interest. So you sit back, and then a lot of people sit back and complain when 20 voices made decisions. Well, you had the opportunity to make your voices in the hundreds instead of the tens and 20s.
I think in this case, maybe that's not 100%. I think it's definitely probably part of it.
Right.
But I think going to what you guys were saying about the timeline, and I know you guys are contractors, so that timeline's not all on you. But I think that plays into it too.
No, I'm not saying that's not the reason. I'm just saying there's other factors that you need to consider when doing that stuff. And it's really interesting how things go. I guess to be honest, it depends when talking about a passion. If you said you're doing something with dogs here tonight and added you would have had the place packed with the same amount of promotion. So, so it's about the passion.
How many dogs you got?
Two.
I think you guys are hitting on something that it is a challenge, and I know the timeline is challenging in this case, and we are definitely hoping that being able to sort of kick off here and have this be the beginning of these conversations and be able to have that survey to really provide a wider range of input on this, that this can be sort of the start of this work as well.
This is the first conversation. I was going to ask you, this is a big town. I rarely make it up to Agnes, love it, but I rarely make it. Are you guys going to be having like something similar and just meet and greets, or at least, somebody can kind of go, hey, here's these things, we just want to talk to you guys real quick, maybe do it an afternoon and stuff?
Right now, we don't have anything scheduled for additional locations. We want to kind of see what the impact and the reach of the survey can be, ideally, because we've really heard very strongly that that's going to be the easiest way for people to engage in this process, because it is tough to get out to a location, especially later at night or childcare or any of those things. Really, an online survey can be the most accessible and equitable way to really gather that information. So that's where we're focused right now.
Some community ambassadors, people that are vested, that live here, that'd be interested in what we're doing.
It's great.
No, not it. Not it. I'm just relaying stuff that we did in the Middle East and Europe.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
It just goes back to community engagement.
Yeah.
When do you anticipate that the survey will be available?
It should be out within the next week.
where are you putting it, I guess, is a better question.
Yeah, so we're gonna have it, it's gonna be hosted on the Travel Curry County website, I believe, but then we'll be able to post it on social media as well, I believe.
So what this money does for what we set up for the strategic planning process was if you go to the Travel Curry Coast website, that website is a travel, it has a tourism section, it has an economic development section, then it has a live section there where we have community information and on the live part of the website. And then, so what we've been doing is we've been keeping the strategic planning updates on there. Like I said, the project just started, the process really just started, so there's not much out there, but that's where we've planned on linking to the survey. And again, that'll be on radio, the newspapers, social media, all those outlets where we can get it.
Could we not just put it on the county government website? I would never have thought about looking at
We
the
also link to
travel
Right.
website.
We
It
do
seems
link,
like an odd place to hide things.
we do link to it on the county homepage. It is. So it's hosted on that, on the live page, but you link to it, you can link directly to it from the county's homepage. So
Never
it's
thought anything to
basically,
do with Curry government would be on the travel channel.
well, it's not the travel channel, it's the Curry County homepage.
Yeah,
If you
that's
just go to the
my bad
homepage,
humor, sorry.
it just links you directly there. I mean, you don't even know you're being linked. Just click it, and that's where you're going to end up.
Is there, sorry, not in this meeting, is there other important county information that's posted on that website and not directly on the county government website? I'm looking at it right now, but is
So-
that a place where I should be checking for information on a regular basis?
So the way it's set up with the county is we have a county government website. That was set up a couple years ago. It's not, the county, how can I say this? They didn't spend a lot of money on that website, so it's not very interactive. The other website, the Travel Curry Coast website, is more interactive. So when we have engagement or things that we want people to respond to, we link over to the travel website. You're on the county website, you don't even know you're linking over to the travel website, that's where we can engage more people, and that's where we've had more success because of the regular county website being limited.
Is the Travel Curry Coast, is that the county, is that a county run
Travel Curry Coast is a county website.
Okay.
So, but again, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your answer clearly. So if I want to find information about the county, should I be looking at, this kind of goes under engagement, should I be looking at the county
Look at the
website
county.
or the travel?
Look at the county website because if, for example, if you go to the county website right now, you're going to see a press release about strategic planning, and then that's also duplicated over on the Travel Curry Coast website.
So if it's on the Curry Coast Live, on the Travel Curry Coast Live, it will be on the county website as well?
Depends what it is. On the LIVE website, you're going to see veterans resources, senior citizen resources, etc. We would not put that on the Board of Commissioners page because that's not something they maintain. If you're looking for the news or big things for you to be involved in related to government, go to the government webpage. Like I said, but we do host it over on the travel site. All right. Yeah.
Director Schmelzer, thank you for that clarification. This is a process, and I've already had some very good input.
You know, we're very short-staffed, but there's no lack of enthusiasm or commitment from our board to start this process and put this in action. And, you know, the public is not a great turnout tonight, but I think this is a good start. So I think there's more coming. I think your work has got tremendous credibility, and we're following you closely. So we're moving forward, and we all need to be educated in that process and how we can make that work best. The first one that comes to mind for me is public safety. That is something I've learned as commissioner that is just paramount, and there's always small and large issues that sometimes challenge, you know, that responsibility. So, and then I heard a businessman in the room a bit ago say, hey, you figure out economic development, and I think this is very true. That's a great hub. You know, public trust is a great hub. Maybe both of those, Tim, should be in their own category. So, could be. So, yeah, good work. And one more little side note with what our county's been through, especially the south part of Curry County in the last 8 years. Emergency preparedness only got 3 or 4 dots, and I think 2 of those were mine. So, you know, We're much better prepared than we were 2 years ago, but we have to be proactive and looking out for the future and be ready. And I think we're really making some good strides in that. So I'm glad that's one of your 10 categories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other thoughts?
Well, are these categories out here, this is your starting jumping off point here, or, and you're looking to maybe create other categories that you're looking at? Or you just break these down, this is your top list and then tree out from there?
This is where we're starting. So if there's other pieces that need to get added to it, sort of in a big picture way, we definitely want to look at that. When it gets down to the end of this planning process, we will have fewer priorities than these. We will narrow in on select top priorities, basically. So this list will get first expanded and then contracted as well.
I have a question, if you don't mind. Sorry. Your processes with the plan. Obviously, those are all key things. I'm sure you're getting all kinds of different input. You're going to pull all kinds of data sets and whatnot, information. You pull your data sets and you're going to kind of figure it out. And then you're going to actually talk to people and go, okay, what's viable, what isn't, what's a dream, what's a hope, three over the left, all that good stuff. How, as you start refining that, how much are you going to re-engage the community? I'm curious, because I understand this is just the first time. It's like going to village, you're like, hey, we're going to rebuild your stuff and stuff. But first, hey, what do you guys actually need? I mean, I get, this is a good way to start things, but what's the process? Are we just going to see you guys once and then later on we'll read the report when it's done? Or what is your process?
That's a great question. We will be circling back and getting community input at least one more time in this process. We really are waiting to see sort of what we hear from the survey and basing our decisions on that. If we get a ton of really fantastic input at that point, that will sort of steer us in one direction. If we feel like we're lacking in some areas and that we haven't gotten as much feedback at that part of the process, that will change things
This
as
is
well.
huge. Strategic plan is like a business plan for the county. So, I mean, this is huge because this is happening. This is going to really give it a sense of direction and purpose. So it's, I'll be watching.
Yeah. Did you have anything else?
No, I would just say it's this being the first sort of go around, it'll be an evolving process. So we kind of believe in getting input, especially from communities, sort of, or engage them in two ways. Mm-hmm. Get some input at the beginning, mm-hmm. right, and figure out, are we hearing something vastly different from the community that we're hearing from the county itself, mm-hmm. or is it more in sync? And then making sure that we're doing a good job once the plan is developed, communicating that back out so then that process can then sort of take fold over time and get the community more engaged in the process going forward. So, can there always be more engagement during the process? Sure, but it needs to be a continuous process, and this first one will be a start in that regard too.
I think you'll find that we're very committed, passionate, just amazing to me. Every time I turn around and somebody, I used to work in NASA, I was an engineer. I used to do this, or the Sultan of Brunei's hairdresser, or whatever. And it's just like, wow, I mean, there's such a diverse, contrary to popular belief, Curry County is by far one of the smartest counties. It's individual by individual, some of those passionate, artistic people. That comes back to that community engagement. A lot of people move here so we can kind of be left alone. Some of us spent 30 years around people all the time. But the community engagement, I think you'll find that as more people find out about this and get clarification. There's been times where people have come to me and said, hey, the county's kind of off. No, you actually just go look at the actual, no, they're not off. You just have them to read all the writing. Right? Let me explain this to you. This is what the county's doing, and stuff. So, I think more transparency, I guess, is going to, and community engagement. You'll have all kinds of people, and then you get the groups that's going to probably try to push their own agenda.
Well, just having a plan is part of that transparency, right? Because then you have something to actually have a dialogue about that everyone can reference, right? Instead of, I heard this or I heard that.
Envisioning people with highlighters. How come, what you did, we didn't do?
And could you go through and maybe share with the group where the managers have gotten so far? Because the managers did talk about a vision and trying to come up with basically some thoughts about a vision, goals, things of that nature that they see as a management team they would like to see for the county. And I'd be interested in having you share that with the group to get their feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the beginning of any strategic planning process, they usually start by looking at, as an organization, what is our mission, vision, and values? And really the vision is like truly what is the big picture idea of where we're trying to get to. So in this case, what is the vision for our community? What, if we were writing a headline about Curry County 10 years from now, what would that headline say in a really positive way? So where could we be? So that we have this sort of overarching vision here. And then the mission is really, okay, we as an organization, how are we going to help support getting to that vision? What is our work going to do to contribute toward that vision that we see for ourselves? And then you have your organizational values, and those are things that you basically, how are we going to treat each other and the public and everyone that we work with as we are doing the work that we do? What are really our core tenets? So we've been working with the management team and the Board of Commissioners at the county to really develop a mission, vision, and values to say, okay, how do we get on the same page around even like why are we here and what are we doing together in the most broad sense? So we've had a couple really great management and work sessions there. We've been getting feedback back and forth. And so that sort of mission, vision, values of the Curry County as an organization really will undergird the rest of this process and really help inform a lot of how is that team as a group making decisions and trying to be on the same page together. So those pieces are in the works. So does that sound, yes, exactly. I'd love to hear any feedback on that process.
Where did the management team come into this?
Get you in one sec, you
Right.
first and then second.
So you're asking the people who work for the county their idea. What is if you're just starting to work, what is the overall idea? What's the most you're hearing on the vision part of this? The first, where does county management see us being in 5 years?
Yeah, the big themes that we heard were encompassed in the mission statement were really around the safety of the community, the affordability of living here, and then the third one was, and then economic development and economic resilience in this area. And so those were three really key pieces that were coming out of that vision conversation.
Now, to follow up on that, I noticed on the board up here, there's lots of dots on, economic development, financial stability. I see hardly any dots on public safety. I know that in the last every time it comes up before the voters of this county continually vote down more funding for the county sheriff's department. What happens when the vision of the management and board of commissioners differs from the vision of the citizens they're supposed to be representing? Because apparently, there's a big difference between what the people in power think we should have, more cops, where the people themselves say, we had enough, and we've had, that's kind of why we live here, is because we don't have an overbearing police presence. And, how does your plan resolve the difference between what the public says and what the management says?
So there are really three pieces, right? So there's the input from the community, there's I'll say the recommendations of management, who's responsible for running the county, and then there's the authority and decision-making by the commissioners. So that's how it happens. If there's a disconnect, then I would expect, using your examples, that if something is brought before the community that's out of sync with what the community wants, then it's not going to be supported. And so like I was saying, so the plan ideally will reflect alignment, but let's just say that it doesn't. But that's a starting point. At least you have something then to be reacting to moving forward. I mean, that's the goal. The goal isn't for it to be a flawed plan, but the point is, if there are those disconnects, if despite public input, it's still not reflective, for the sake of argument, of what the community really wants, then that feedback will continue, and the lack of support will continue until those things get aligned. And the plan is not a panacea, but it's a cog in the wheel of making it happen, of getting to that point. And sometimes, communities are in alignment, out of alignment, or usually somewhere in the process, and it ebbs and flows. And I know there's some work to be done here.
I think the other thing, when we do strategic planning work, is that it's a moment to sort of surface that as well. Because sometimes you don't even know, it's a bunch of hearsay, or, this gives it sort of a structure of saying, here, we are actively soliciting input here, and seeing where things are potentially in alignment or out of alignment as well. So I think that it can bring a lot of value potentially in that, just to address the issue that you're talking about.
So, and maybe a better comment is, so the mere fact that that's here, I think recognizes something, right? Now, on one hand, you can say, transparency, public trust, those are kind of throwaway terms in governmental arenas, visibility. I mean, those words get used a lot, but it is here. And I think, and there is certainly in our discussions, there's acknowledgement that there is an opportunity to build more trust and provide better transparency. That's kind of a continuum anyway, but I don't think people are oblivious to that.
At the end of the day, the Board of Commissioners votes on accepting this plan, not the people.
Correct.
So, that becomes, a sticking point. If
that's the case, why are we not implementing something as simple as saying, you want to pay somebody's back property taxes, and at the end of 4 years, you file a lien, the county has the money all the time then. And it becomes a piece of property that has a value back into the community.
Great, thank you for adding that. I think, Julie, you might have a follow-up on that first point.
Sure. The county has hundreds of properties. That's true. I think I'm the one in the county that has looked at every single parcel that we have and researched every single parcel that we have. The majority of the properties that the county owns are in an old subdivision that is wetland. It's called, it's up at Flores Lake. And the county actually just entered in, or is in the process of entering into an agreement with state parks where they would give state parks several hundred of those parcels in exchange for some land that is developable or more developable, and that's on Highway 101. A lot of the other properties that you see on that county property list are alleyways, vacated roads, or too small to build on. When you actually narrow the list down to parcels that somebody could actually build a house on, and I have done that, there's not that many. There's like 3 per city. And then once you get out into the county, there's a couple more. Many of them have restrictions, development restrictions on them. For example, I'm thinking of a beautiful one on Coy Creek Road and one on Edson Creek Road, where they were given to the road for, to the county for road purposes. So there's a deed restriction saying the county can't sell that. Then there's other properties that look really good on paper until you go out there and you realize that they're in an active slide area. When you take all of these county properties and you really narrow these hundreds of parcels down, you're really left with a handful that can actually be used for development. For the properties in the cities, the county has discussed that, and they have reached out to housing groups and said, we are willing to donate these for housing to try and stimulate more housing in the county. So far, no one has taken us up on that offer. I was here in, this is my second term working for the county. The first time I was here, I know the board at that time had offered several properties to Habitat for Humanity, and they turned us down. They didn't want them. So,
on what grounds, do you recall?
Pardon?
On what grounds did they decline that offer?
You'd want to ask them why they declined it. I mean, I can speculate and go through files, but so there's a lot of issues when the county does donate property too. There's still the thing about the system development charges the city charges, so you want them to waive that to make it affordable as well. And then it's finding a developer who's willing to build that and then only provide the housing to low-income housing to individuals, for example. The other reality is there's state law out there that says when a county sells property, so let's say there's 5 really great parcels out there that we want to sell. There's a law out there that talks about when a county sells property, that money gets divided amongst all of the districts. Because we have over 40 specialty districts in our county, when the county sells a piece of property, the county gets 6% of that sale price. That 6% normally doesn't even cover your staff time, your legal time. You know, you have to have somebody create a legal description, you have to provide that proof of title. There's a lot involved in that.
So it wouldn't help with the financial stability, but it would help with the infrastructure of housing, kind of.
It would help with infrastructure if we could get people willing to buy those properties. What the county is doing, what the county's looking at right now is there's a law out there that says if a property is valued less than $15,000, you can do a direct sale to people. So that's kind of what the county is doing this fall. They revisited this list. They said these ones that are underwater, or I'm sorry, that have wetland and access issues, if the state parks wants them, let's work with them to transfer that property. And then let's start with these smaller parcels. We've had actually 3 people come forward to us this year saying, yes, we would like to buy property from the county, and these parcels do have a value less than $15,000. So currently, the county is in the process of transferring those properties. None of them are developable on their own. They're like somebody wants to make their lot bigger, so they're adding another 25 feet or something to that effect. But so I just caution when people look at that list of county properties, because I did the same thing when I first came here. I'm like, oh my God, there's hundreds of parcels, until you start actually looking at them, and the majority cannot be developed or sold for development. And then the few that we do have, of course, selling them does not answer the county's financial problems. However, it does address infrastructure issues, such as freeing that land up so then it can have a house put on it. And then at least that house could be added to the tax rolls.
I would think the county would be playing hot potato with anything that was marketable. Like, even though there's only a handful, I would say those should be already out there, not in the works to go out there. As soon as they came into possession of the county, they should have been pushed to be developed.
Yes.
Or at least out of the county's, I mean, it's a dead hole at that point. You guys, the county gets nothing sitting on them.
So in my position, I came here in January and have a work list. As far as the properties that will go up for sheriff's sale, that is the list I'm working on for spring. Again, there's not saying there's only so much one person can do, but there really is only so much one person can do.
Right.
So starting with the smaller undeveloped parcels, getting them off of there was the first priority. Getting the smaller ones that people wanted to purchase to enlarge their lots, offering some to nonprofits to help with low-income housing has been done. And now, of course, the next is to focus on the ones that we can sell and get them off to a sheriff's sale. That also involves, as you can imagine, an attorney, the assessor's office. I mean, it's not just me doing it. It's a process. It takes a while. You can't just, and it also takes a while to get property back. From the time somebody stops paying taxes until you can actually offer that for sale, it's about 6 to 7 years.
Right.
So a lot of times people are like, oh, the county has it, but there's legal constraints on some of that.
And there's one other thing to address what Tim was talking about. When you pay your property tax bill, you look at 2 values. One is market value, one's the assessed value. If you have an older piece of property, it might be worth $400,000 for market. The assessed value is only $200,000. If you take a bare piece of land and you subdivide it, you're asking, why aren't we seeing more subdivisions? As soon as you subdivide it, you don't have to do any dirt moving, you don't have to do anything else, but all of a sudden, at $400,000 market value, that's your assessed value. You double the taxes.
Right.
And as you make the improvements, your market value goes up, so does your taxes. So
Same.
it's a statewide problem, it's not just here, but it's why you don't see the mom and pop development, somebody that wants to do something in phases as they can afford it, because the cost to hold is going to break it. They just can't hold it. They can't sit on it for 5 years and work on it for 10 years or whatever it is. They can't afford it. So that's a huge problem, really big problem.
Yeah, that's part of that. One more I'm saying is to have a development done of any kind is kind of a joke in the, not necessarily just this county, but as you're, same thing with what you're saying, where used to be where, you know, larger property, they divide off an acre, give it to their kids, build a house. Here's another taxable piece of property. But the market value wasn't ridiculous on what was left. But the market values now have been inflated so much, and I hate to put it this way, but the county in some level is doing that too. Take for instance, I bought a place when I moved here 2008, 2009, bought it for $102,000. It stayed around that $102,000 for 7 years, 6 years. Then all of a sudden it started jumping up at $15,000, $20,000 every year in the market value.
That's because of the cycle that they're in.
Right.
And the fact they got to do 6 appraisals a day.
Right.
If you go higher one in the open market, it takes 3 months.
So now I'm looking at it going, I haven't done anything to this piece of property. Why has it gone from being a market assessment of 110.15 to 170? If I go and do anything to this piece of property, now I'm going to be a tax assessed at 170, guaranteed. Not market assessed, but tax assessed. Why would I want to do anything to improve it? Why would I want to do anything else to it? Let's go back to the same thing of community development. I looked at maybe doing an ADU or something along that line, but why would I? My taxes would increase exponentially. Same thing goes to the mom and pops that are sitting on 40 or 50, 60 acres and used to subdivide off an acre, build a house, supplement their income or give it to a kid or whatever. But as soon as they make that subdivision, that whole piece of property now gets full market assessment as tax value. They're not going to do that.
The state sets that rate.
Right.
It used to be in the 30% rate, and now it's 100.
Right.
Yeah, we've got a housing problem. I've got that. So in this thing, just to try and bring it back, I have to leave pretty soon. What we're doing is a 5 to 10 year strategic plan, basically a business plan for the county. How long do you expect this process to take before you'll have some semblance of a game plan? Obviously, housing might be a new paper by itself.
Yeah, we're hoping it'll take the next couple months.
Yeah.
So we're trying to move through it as rapidly as we can without
But effectively,
compromise.
right.
Yeah,
I was just kind of tentatively. And when do you hoping to start implementing the strategic plan?
This coming budget session. So we are looking at actually having a proposed budget or the first initial proposed budget in late February already, and we are hoping that it can reflect some of the stuff that is in this plan.
Excellent. The community as a whole will be able to come and chat to y'all about that?
Through the budget process and everything?
No, once you develop you'll have some sort of community.
Rollout of the plan?
Yeah.
That type of, yes.
Excellent.
That won't be on the Travel Channel.
It will, you just get to it via the county.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, that's what I learned, that's what I.
Yeah, I mean, go to the county website to find government information.
Right.
Are there any other areas that folks wanted to talk about?
Just one comment. I want to assure everybody here that when it comes to the hundreds of properties that the county has, previous boards before us worked on this, and we have picked up that pace and done everything we can to figure this out. One gentleman mentioned that Salem is part of the issue and land use planning that affects us all. And so we have to get to the capital level and say, hey, rural counties have got to have some breaks here. There's been some excellent points here tonight. When it comes to market values going up, assessed values going up, the demand for services are going up. We're trying to solve that problem. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this group of properties, we are well aware, and I think Director Smelser mentioned that and clarified it also very good. But we just need to understand that we're not asleep at the switch when it comes to that responsibility. And there's some opportunities there too. Just a lot of barriers that we're trying to overcome.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Why is education not listed?
So under quality of life, it is a piece that we are including in that quality of life category of access to healthcare, education, and affordable housing.
Okay.
What would you like to see changed in education? I'm already super college educated, I'm not going to school here and I have no children, so what would you like to see? You're the first person that's brought that up. What would you like to see with education?
Well, I'd like to see the graduation rates increase.
Oh, I see. Oh, of course.
But I come from Minnesota, and we spend a lot of money on education. I was a teacher for 37 years.
So that kind of...
I guess I see a lot of things lacking. Have you been in the library lately at the high school?
I love libraries.
Yeah. It just... I went in and asked for a Wi-Fi password, and their Wi-Fi was down. I just went, what? Your Wi-Fi is down? Yeah, it's going to be a while before it gets back up. That to me is just, I can't even understand that. So I think it's not to say that they aren't working hard over there. I think they are, but there's so many things that are in place in Minnesota that are not in place here.
We're like, do you have great ideas you can share that maybe we might be able to expand? 'Cause I mean, that's what I mean. We come from a place, I was literally talking to a gentleman about his fence, and he showed me some blueprints, and I was like, wow, it's just a fence. He was like, oh, I used to work for NASA as an engineer. And I'm like, really? I mean, there's people like you. That's that community engagement. There are people like you that have, other experiences and stuff. And then everybody has to remember we are a rural community, though, so everything's not going to always be like it is in big cities.
It's different here.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but it sounds like you have some great ideas, some great experience.
Thanks.
Do you want to come vote?
I just want to add one thing on public safety. Someone commented on more sheriffs, more deputies. One thing that it keeps coming up again and again is we need a new jail. I mean, it was in dire need a decade ago, and they've kind of kept it running and everything. But as far as public safety, that's probably our biggest problem in this county right now. Is that
The physical buildings?
yes?
The physical building
The
is
physical
crumbling.
building. So
It's
it has
like
to be-
plastered
and
over.
It's so beyond out of compliance that it's a miracle that they're still letting us keep it open.
Well, and that goes with partnerships, because I do believe there are state matching funds for courthouses.
Yes and no, but that's still
And
a
there's some sort of partnership.
big ticket
Yeah.
item.
But that would
A
fall
lot
under
of money.
partnership?
Yes, yeah.
Within this, you also looked at under infrastructure, to really kind of understand what are the county's holistic infrastructure need, and the jail is a piece of that when we're looking at the buildings that are owned and run by the county as well. Because yes, that has come up in previous conversations as well.
I would like to see Wedderburn under the jurisdiction of Gold Beach. I live in Wedderburn, in Road Hills, and I needed a police officer, and he was in Brookings, because I couldn't get police. I have to get sheriff. And it was, I mean, the dispatcher could hear the person banging on my door, and I never was serviced at all. They didn't even come and ask the next day what had happened. that there were no sheriffs available.
Is this a recurring problem?
Well, I had drug dealers on my block for 2 years. 2
I
years.
can't address that, but if somebody's banging on your door, I'd be happy to saunter over and ask them, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
You want to get swimming in the river?
Yeah, he was just drunk, but, you know, I understand that, that there's a process, and that's something I've wanted to do, especially now that we have building happening in Rogue Hills. We do have a development started, so be nice to, we have fire, be nice to have police too.
Right. Interesting.
So on public safety,
Yeah.
the public is split sometimes on that, and as was identified with the boats, fairly consistent in past years, until it comes to your door. And so our responsibility is to recognize that ahead of time and have that vision and do everything we can to make those knocks at the doors as rare as possible. And that's our job. And so if we have to persuade the public that's out in the future, then we better do that, and I think we are.
Well, and I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier this evening about that whole level of where the criminal behavior comes in and where those other areas can help people be stable and not committing that. And you were talking about that before.
And could you also do something that, since we are so spread out and do that, and I'm sure it's been thought about to consider, but consider interagency, agreements. If the city of Gold Beach has an officer that can go down there, it basically just contract out, the county contracts out there, so you don't have all the overhead of having a person. So you're basically, the county services is paying a per call or per use type deal to do that. And then the county can help out the areas up rivers and up the coast and a little bit farther out and be better uses. We're all in the same house. It's kind of like, I remember back in the way old days when you have a fire, it broke out on the next block, but the closest firehouse was in the wrong district. I was like, well, sorry, we can't do anything. And that's how we started developing those interagency agreements, so you can do that. It's just, I have a wife that's at home. It's just like, hey, you hear a noise, you want something going on. And I've had that happen before where it says, I'm sorry, we have nobody available, but call us if they get in. So it's an interesting thing, and understand it, and lots of respect for law enforcement, and a lot of people seem to think, and I kind of heard a comment, and with all respect and everything, a lot of people come up and say they get away from law enforcement. Well, law enforcement is also the first ones to help those people too who want to stay away from law enforcement.
Yeah.
So they're sticking their neck out, they're out there for us. They would rather come and say, hey, we're having an event, come see to do this, instead of, okay, now I got to walk around the dark area, make sure that I don't get shot, because we service things with one deputy. You go to other places, and there's a reason why they send 2, 3, 4 people out, for their safety too.
I have a process question.
Yeah.
On your survey that's coming out in about a week, these are the categories that are going to be on the survey? So this is the basic format? And what's your estimated time, the length that you want people to spend on the survey?
We are estimating that, really we will have some open-ended questions. So if you want to spend a lot of time answering those, you can. But it will be less than a 10-question survey overall. So it should be pretty straightforward in addition to these rankings.
Was there any thought to, sorry.
And your age group, I have high schoolers up in Port Orford. My friends have high schoolers here. Like, can the high schoolers participate too, or is it like age group?
It's everyone, yeah. It's anyone that wants to fill it out.
Nice.
One thing I want to consider, I spent probably about 4 or 5 minutes trying to find that page. And we linked survey on that front page, because most of the time when you go on the web pages, if it's not there on the front, people pass, move to the next item. So for some people, it might have been just as long to find it as it is to fill the survey out. So the link on that front page would probably be a little bit more important, because I had to go down, I had to go find the menu, then I go to live, then I read it. Oh, you can find it here. Then I went back to do that. So
Yeah, we
Just
can
a quick
definitely work.
icon right there, strategic plan survey. You're in.
Yeah.
Kind of back, do we have somebody that pretty much does grant writing in this county? Or is it just hit and miss, volunteer? I know budgeting constraints. It's funny because we're going to catch 22. We want community engagement, but we're still trying to get communications out. Everybody wants public trust, but we're still have to inform the public because everybody's been sitting back going, oh, whatever. And so, the community as a whole has to also get involved, It's kind of got to be a partnership. I'm curious, do we have a grant writer? Because I know Homeland, I have a bunch of friends that work up at the ARC building, military building in Salem, and they're all writing grants left and right for jail improvements and free beds and stuff. So Homeland just did a whole bunch of stuff. I get a lot of emails.
You want to
So I'm
take that?
curious about that.
Yeah, I'll take that one. We have some staff that are very talented in writing grants. I think you probably know that we're at a bare bones staff, so those people are doing a couple jobs, so they don't have time to write the grant. They do some we just don't have. We do have volunteers. Mr. Barnes here has volunteered. We are also looking at some of the more difficult grants, such as federal grants. We do have an economic development organization that will help us with some, provided they're within, and they don't charge us for that, but that's very limited, like a CDBG grant, which we're only allowed one at a time. You can only do one CDBG grant at a time.
Right.
And then we can also pay for those services. They don't, it's not that expensive to pay for them. Some do a certain percentage, some do it if you're successful with the grant. Some are a blanket fee like $3,000, $6,000, $9,000, which is well worth it for sometimes. But the problem is coming up with the $3,000, $6,000, $9,000.
I know 7 different, retired, master grant writers that live in this community, or live up the road, or that way. That's why I was kind of just curious. I've done a bunch of grant writing myself in the past.
Well, and that's why we do have volunteers like Dave. I think a lot of times it's matching the grant with the experience of the grant writer too.
Yeah.
Some people specialize in natural resource type projects, some specialize in housing or low income projects, some specialize in law enforcement. It's not one person. If you have a grant writer, it's not like they can do everything.
Right.
They need a team.
Most stuff I deal with is more federal and community services stuff, so more homeland and stuff like that.
Sure.
Like
Well, we could use the assistance if you're volunteering.
I have one other question.
Part of the problem with grants in the county is that in the past, they've not been administrated correctly. With having a small staff, there has been issues with you're adding, grant administration is a large job. It requires, you have reporting, you have performance issues, there's a lot to, getting a grant, it's easy to say get a grant, but getting it is the easy part.
Administrative, it's the hard part. Well, yeah.
And not always the easy part, because you have to have a product to sell the grant writers, and as much as I love living here, we don't have an awesome product that we're selling right now.
Exactly. I've gotten grants recently for things over at the hatchery. I got one a couple of weeks ago to start building Kids Don't Float life jacket loaner stations. We're starting with one out in Posayna, and I just spoke to a couple of people today. We're going to try and get one down at Loeb and another one up at the Arizona Beach at the youth fishing pond up there. Port of Gold Beach has expressed an interest. So, but there's a lot to, you need something to sell. This was, I'm selling kid safety, so you need the product. And Gold, like you said, Curry County doesn't have a lot for sale right now.
But I think this plan is going to help.
Oh, yeah.
I hope so too. That's what this should really be pointing in directions that we can go, us in directions that we can go ourselves. It is really the basis of this. I see these people as just here to draw out what we want. We know what it is inside. It's their job to pull it out of us and put it down on paper for us.
Yeah, we always say we are facilitating this process for you. We aren't doing this process for you. That has to be a group effort. Great.
Sure.
Yeah, just last Wednesday, we got board direction to dig a little deeper into a specialty company that does grant writing. I think I speak for the board, we believe relatively
on good value and affordable. And so we'll know more on that one just in a week or so. And yeah, we have people in our program capable of writing grants, and the administrative part of it has been a thing in past boards that we definitely have to overcome. Two other things, I want to go back to this table here. Rob Foster is the director of our Curry County Housing Task Force. You might want to, if I could ask politely, Rob, get the emails from these folks at your table and send them the Curry County Housing Action Plan. I think if they haven't seen it, they would be interested in that. I'd also like to get back to public safety. Not having an officer show up or a deputy show up when somebody's beating on your door, that is absolutely unacceptable to me, to us. And so we have 4 excellent law enforcement agencies in our county. But in a county of 23,000 people, a lot of folks would suggest we don't need 4 specific separate law enforcement agencies. I'm hoping part of that plan will be that we'll eventually have 2. You mentioned, Mr. Shabante, on a contract basis. I think there's a lot of better efficiencies, back to your top 2 there, and better coverage, better safety for the officers themselves. I think that's coming. So again, I hope that might be part of our strategic plan. That's my vision. I've worked some on that. You have to break down the city silos. You know, they are very well managed, I'm proud to say, but there's still a lot of ways to save dollars and solve some of those issues. So that's my take on that.
All right. I think on that note, we can wrap this up. But if you have any other questions for me or Mark, we're here. Please feel free to come talk with us one-on-one. And we really, really appreciate the time that you took to come out tonight. As we said, this is the beginning of these conversations. So this is great. Thank you.
Are you from the Medford, Eugene, or Portland office?
You know, I grew up in Eugene, but we're actually based out of Seattle.
You guys are at Seattle?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You as well.